تقول القرآن خلق.
So as Muslims, we would be looking at the historical accounts of Jesus, which arguably could be the Synoptics and John. And from that, we would say that nowhere in the Synoptics and John is there anything where Jesus is teaching any kind of triune doctrine that you guys believe in.
So just to be clear, we agree, historic Jesus, we're going to go to the Gospels and to understand who that was.
Yeah, just the Jesus quotation material. We're not granting that necessarily the disciples actually wrote the gospel.
That's fine. Red letters. Red letters.
Right.
So we can agree that's where we're going to go to.
Right.
Sound good to you?
That sounds excellent.
That sounds excellent. That's what we were hoping.
Yeah, so
Yeah, specifically if it could be corroborated to him. So there are certain aspects like that we're not going to grant as it pertains to the red letters still, but we'll get to that when you guys get to those arguments.
Right. So would you agree that Jesus does teach there's one God?
Of course,
Yep.
it just says the Shema, yeah.
Okay, so then you would also agree that he teaches the Father as God, right? Okay, good. So far fine. So then the question then becomes, is teaches there's one God, says the Father is God. Is there a place he teaches that he is God and that the Holy Spirit is God is really what we need to talk about.
No, not necessarily, because you would also have to show that he's saying that they're co-equal, co-eternal. This is the doctrine of the Trinity, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not subordinationists, you're not Arians, you're not this, you're not that. You guys hold to co-equal, co-eternal. So that would be what would be expected within the scripture, right? Which that's what we're arguing is not found.
Okay, so let's start with the first thing. Does Jesus teach that he is God?
you can give your argument, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We can rebuttal.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, there are several places where Jesus demonstrates that he is God. So, for example, in Mark chapter 2, he says that he is the Lord of the Sabbath. Okay, we know from Exodus that Yahweh was the Lord of the Sabbath. So whoever is Lord of the Sabbath is Yahweh. That is the earliest gospel. In the synoptic material, we have him claiming a divine title called Lord, Lord, Kitty, Kitty. And as scholars like Robert Bowman Jr. have pointed out, that is a title only attributed to Yahweh in Greek texts from that time or prior. It's throughout the Septuagint, some apocryphal texts. Jesus claims that title for himself. And then, of course, in John, it opens by saying that he is God, and then he affirms that he is. Places like John 5, where he has the same abilities that God, the Father has, or John 8. Anything you want to add? You two want to add?
Should we break it? That's a good point. My points start.
Yeah, maybe
Places.
start.
Okay.
Yeah, I think some just general responses. One would be when in Mark 2, when Jesus says that he's Lord over Sabbath, the Son of Man is Lord over Sabbath. We just would say, historically speaking, in the Palestinian first century context, he's referring to the Son of Man just generally refers to humanity. Because then we see in Mark 2, 23 to 27, he starts quoting halachic tradition, like in Mark 2, 27, when he says that that even man is made over, or the Sabbath is made for man, not man made for Sabbath. He's quoting Yoma 85b and other texts that can be found in the Dead Sea Scrolls have the same implied meaning. Next, we see you referenced the double lock, or Kyrios Kyrios in Matthew 7.
Kitties.
Yeah. We just would say it's a double vocative. It's not actually saying it's Adonai Yahweh. You have to assert that Jesus actually elsewhere claims that he's first divine for the interpretation of that to actually be Adonai Yahweh. Otherwise, we would just say that he's just saying Lord, referring to himself as a human Lord twice.
Okay, so let's start with the Mark thing. So Mark 2, how does that open? It opens with the story of Jesus healing a paralyzed man. Does he identify himself as the Son of Man in Mark 2?
Yeah, in Mark 2, he can identify himself as the Son of Man in places, but as a general reference to himself or humanity as a whole.
Okay, so where does Jesus ever specifically say Son of Man refers to humanity as a whole?
So I'm aware that the gospel authors use the Son of Man and reinterpret it to explicitly be about Jesus. However, we're arguing from a historical context, and in that historical context, in a first century Palestinian or Aramaic language, as we see multiple scholars able to connect.
So we have to still go to the Gospels to understand how.
But we're arguing it from a historical aspect, not how the gospel authors have now reinterpreted these sayings.
Well, how do you know they reinterpreted
Jesus? If we're going to be looking at that, then we'd be looking at the gospel source material and how.
Well, how do you know they reinterpret it? Because everywhere when Jesus talks about the Son of Man, he's referring to himself. There's no explicit indication where he refers to the Son of Man as someone distinct from himself. I'll grant you, there are places where it's vague, but there are explicit places where Jesus talks about the Son of Man where it's clearly himself, like in Mark 2.
Right. I don't deny that, and sometimes that the Son of Man can be in reference to himself. However, we see that in Mark 2, the most plausible contextual reading would just be that it's in reference to humans, because he then literally starts quoting Jewish midrashic statements talking about how men are made over the Sabbath. So there's no reason for him to think that it's specifically Jesus alone, when he already tells us in Mark 23 to 27 that it's in reference to all humanity.
So you said in Mark 2, Jesus does identify himself as the Son of Man. Where in the chapter does he show that context switches explicitly?
I literally just explained it. Mark 23 to 27, he explains that the ruling on men being over Sabbath is general to all of humanity. It doesn't say that. So he just did. I gave the arguments for why that is. I already gave an argument.
Yeah, so it doesn't say that man is over the Sabbath. He just says that the Sabbath was created for man to accommodate them, not that man is over the Sabbath, because man is subject to the Sabbath. They have to obey it, they have to follow it. But he does say, distinguishing the Son of Man, he says, consequently, the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath, which, as he pointed out earlier in the context, we see that Jesus explicitly refers to himself as the Son of Man. Where contextually do you get this idea that Jesus is now changing when he refers to the Son of Man? It's not himself now, but it's everybody.
Yeah, so like I said, when he's quoting in Mark 27 that even men or I don't know the exact verbatim quote, he's quoting
Read it.
Yeah, if you
it's right here. It says, and Jesus was saying to them, the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath.
Right. So
consequently, the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath.
This quotation can also be found verbatim, found in Jewish midrashic statements and texts that predate Jesus, like the Dead Sea Scrolls. They have the same quotation and the same theology, and the theology entails that men are over Sabbath, as in they can do certain things like picking grain for emergency if they have to eat. And so that's why, and like I said, in the historical context of the first century Palestinian Aramaic speaker, Son of Man, Bari Nosh, can also just mean humanity. So we have no reason to explicitly be taking this as only Jesus.
And that's the problem that we're having here. Because remember, we talked about the historical Jesus and you guys appealed to the Synoptic Gospels and John. And so when
we didn't appeal to its authors though. So we were very specific what we're saying.
The Synoptic Gospels.
No. Yeah, insofar as the red letters, it was insofar as the red letters.
That's my point, sir.
But from a historical aspect, or from a historical aspect.
The red letters in the Synoptic Gospels, you have Mark 2, where Jesus in context refers to himself as the Son of Man and continues the conversation. So you said that you have no reason to think or to conclude that Jesus is referring to himself alone as the Son of Man, being Lord over the Sabbath, but you do contextually, that's what he's talking about.
So I want to be very clear here. When we're saying that we're granting the gospel material, we're talking about the Jesus material from a historical aspect. That's why I made it very clear. We're not saying that the disciples actually wrote the gospels, because we're viewing the gospels from a historical standpoint.
So we go back to the question.
Yeah.
Where do we get the historical Jesus from?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we can get relevant data from the Bible over the historical Jesus, but there's also other gospel material that's going to have it as well. Like I know IP is familiar with the Kernel Gospel of Thomas, also having Q quotes and the consensus of scholarship.
It's second century at best.
Well, the consensus of scholarship holds that it has pre-synoptic independent material from the synoptics, so it's not dependent on the synoptics. So even if we said that the Gospel of Thomas, every part of it was made in the 2nd century, boo-hoo, because it's still independent of the synoptics.
This is irrelevant to the main thing.
That has absolutely... Hold on. He's asking us, where do we get our historical information of Jesus?
Yes.
I just told you the Gospel of Thomas has historical information of Jesus, and it's independent of the Gospels.
So Gospel
or canonical Gospel.
Jesus? Well, I'm giving you the difference between an agent and Jesus, right? So an agent cannot claim to be Yahweh himself, cannot claim the prerogatives of Yahweh, but Jesus does. That's the symmetry breaker. So you'll never see, like, for example, Aaron, when, the example where Aaron takes the staff and when Yahweh says, I'll do it, Aaron does it. You'll never see Aaron say, I'm Yahweh, or claim to be Yahweh, or, whatever. Jesus does.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're familiar with it clearly. Obviously, they know that whenever the verse is being quoted, it says that Yahweh is literally the one who's holding the rod in his hand, but obviously it's Aaron, the one who's holding the rod in his hand. So we would just say that's divine agency, yeah. But back to what T-May was saying, you would have to obviously show first that Jesus actually does claim any kind of divinity for them to be a differential.
Of course. So you do agree that is a symmetry breaker though, right?
No, because for example, when you say divine prerogatives, you mean divine properties?
Yes, of God. So like being all powerful, all knowing, judge of heaven and earth.
So
resurrecting the dead, first and last.
So when it comes to knowing all things, would you agree that's a divine prerogative, right?
Yes. And so that's what I'm asking. Like if Jesus is claiming to have the divine attributes or prerogatives of God, like the things only God does, the claims that only God can make, would you agree that that would be a symmetry breaker between an agent of Yahweh and Yahweh?
No, because we see other instances where others other than Yahweh, other than Jesus, right, would quote unquote be predicated with these prerogatives. For example, 1 John 2:20 said that the disciples know all things.
No,
It says that.
no, that's qualified.
Okay, let's bring it
Yeah,
up.
it's qualified. Yeah. So what we're trying to say is that if Jesus claims to be Yahweh, okay, that can only mean he's either lying, ignorant, or he is actually Yahweh. So
Or there's a fourth
Or he's an
option.
agent.
Can I give you a reference?
In Jewish monotheism in the first century, the legal status, the status of a sender is the same as an agent.
but the sender, the agent, the can never claim to be the king, as he knows.
He has
Never claim to be Yahweh.
he has the same exact status of it. For example, and
It's
well, I'm quoting you actual reference. This is found in like Nedarim 72b. These are
I
midrash.
don't care about that. Give me the Torah.
The thing is, I'm saying there's a fourth option you could say from Jewish monotheism that's agency still, because Jewish monotheism allows this, which I would, if I can just finish it, please. And we can find this example in 1 Samuel 25 when David wants to go marry Abigail, and so he sends his servants, and then the servants go to Abigail, and Abigail prostrates and speaks in the singular in the Hebrew, as if you're speaking to David, but you're speaking to the servants.
Also-
Because the servants have been sent by David, so they have the exact same status as David, while not actually being him.
David sent us, yada, yada, yada. Let's go to what she said.
bow
Behold,
down.
she says, behold, your maid servant. Servant is singular. She's
Right.
the servant.
Yeah, to who?
To the servants of David.
But you is a singular. It's not a plural.
So, the you
So
can,
the you is in reference to only David.
no, it's not. Let me go ahead and respond to this, because in Exodus 20, when it says you shall have no other gods before you, that you is in the singular, but it's referring to the nation of Israel, correct?
Yeah, that's just because Israel can be referred to as a one. Yeah.
So you can have the servants be referred to as one, even though it's referring to a plurality of persons.
But
So
the thing
it
is, you
doesn't call
see a
them David.
difference. You see, because
What's the
after the thing is, when they're speaking on the behalf of David, Abigail refers to them as one, but then after that, then refers to them as plural servants.
so-
So while accepting they're multiple people, whenever they're speaking on the behalf of David, she only calls them one person.
Okay.
Now, whenever she's speaking or when she's performing, yes, that's why the U is why the U is a singular in the Hebrew.
I just gave you okay. So then, if we're gonna-
But then all of a sudden, then it goes to plural once they're not acting
Aaron.
on the behalf of David.
and we're going to use this argument, then you're going to have to say, then when Yahweh's told Israel, you should have no other gods before me, that you there in the Hebrew is in the masculine singular. So,
No, this is
but
qualifying.
but it's addressing,
Right,
that's my point. So is Exodus 20. Is that the you is singular when God is talking to the nation that has a plurality of individuals. So just because the you would be singular, and we have to check this, but even if the you is in the singular form,
Wait a minute. The word for servants?
the word for
Okay.
So even if the you is in the singular there, it can refer to a community or a corporate entity. So the servants on David's behalf will be a corporate entity. She can use the you there singularly. That nowhere here does it say that she's calling.
It's not about the you. It's the fact that
He said-
yeah, it's about that, and it's a servant.
She's
Who is servant?
look, brother.
It's a servant, bro.
But hold on. Yeah,
Singular
she's the servant. It says, behold, your maid servant. Your maid servant is.
I am your servant.
Yes,
We just-
her.
She is.
Who's your servant to?
To the servants of David.
And it represents David, right?
So they're representing.
Right, they represent David.
They represent. So notice.
Right.
So can we agree here that she does not refer to the servants as David?
It does. You said he is. She referred. No, you said yes.
I'll explain again.
She just said yes. It referred to David.
No,
When the servants are speaking on the behalf of David, she refers to them as a singular because she's referring to David, because in Jewish monotheism, which we have first century Jewish attestation, the legal status of a sender is this, or of the sender is the same as an agent. So the reason why it's in the reference. Huh?
This is like
Yeah, but I'm saying we have first century Jewish attestation. So I'm saying in comparison with the historical argument on how we would compare this with Jesus, we would look at it in from a first century Jewish lens, that Jesus is just an agent because he has the same legal authority as Yahweh while not actually being Yahweh.
Can we get back to that main point though?
That is the main point.
servants claim to be the king or David?
it's simple.
No, they don't. But they don't need
this
to.
is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Oh my, no.
They don't need to.
Because here's the symmetry breaker. The symmetry breaker is Jesus does. And so let me ask you
Okay,
this.
but now what you're doing is you're just
Hold on. If an agent claimed to be, like, let's say for these servants, if they claimed to be the king, would they be wrong?
Yeah, that would not be wrong because the same way where Moses claims to be Elohim doesn't mean he's literally Elohim.
Where does Moses claim to be Elohim?
Or when he's made Elohim to
Does
Pharaoh.
Moses claim that?
He's not the author of Exodus?
Brother, is Moses the one saying I am Elohim?
Or who's speaking Exodus? Who's speaking Exodus?
Who's he quoting?
Who's he speaking?
Who's he quoting?
Who is he?
Why else is me a question?
No, I'm the one who asked the question.
I'm asking a question.
I know, because you asked the question with a question. Don't tell me that.
I've been asking a question.
Okay, so I asked, did Moses claim to be Elohim? Did he claim that himself? And the answer is
Right, he's the author of the Pentateuch.
and who's he quoting in the Pentateuch?
Sure, he's quoting God. Why?
So he himself is not claiming to be Elohim. He's saying this is what God said. And
if you're going to use those kind of arguments, it's going to be the exact same sense. Anytime Jesus is speaking, it's actually a revelation from God that he's only speaking because God told him to speak, because he has no will of
No,
man.
that's bad.
So if you're trying to use that kind of argument,
Aaron, this is bad because I'm not talking.
Exactly.
No, this is what I'm saying. Okay, because you have where Moses talks and you have where Moses quotes Yahweh, right?
Right.
Yes,
You
Moses
have-
speaks in Exodus.
You have Jesus where Jesus speaks. You have Jesus where he quotes the Father. And we actually see when the Father speaks back to the Son, right? So we know when the person is speaking, context will tell us, yada, yada, yada. My point is that never, ever do you see an agent of Yahweh claim to be Yahweh. You'll never see that. So with Jesus, he's not just merely an agent, which is why this conversation we're having, he's not just an agent. He claims to be Yahweh. He claims to be God. And that's where we need to get to.
So
and we would just be saying that that's okay because as an agent, he has the same status as the sender, and his sender is Yahweh. But he makes it very clear throughout the Gospels that he doesn't do anything on his own accord. He has things given to him. He seeks someone else's will. These are all things that you would suspect and expect in Jewish agency, but you wouldn't.
That's what we would expect in Trinitarian theology.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right, but the thing is- Exactly, because we're arguing historicity, and we're making the point from a historical standpoint. First century Jewish monotheism is completely compatible with these texts.
Only Yahweh can make these claims. It's only Yahweh that sends the prophets. It's only Yahweh that knows the hearts. That's in Psalms. That's in Isaiah.
go in with the
Well,
arguments.
you're asking me. You're asking.
yeah.
So what I'm showing you, Amir, let me land, please.
You're right, bro.
Thank you. So what I'm demonstrating to you is that even according to your own theology, according to your Quran and Islamic standards, these statements of Jesus would be divine claims, which nobody can say because it would be shirk.
But you're asserting that this verse does entail that in the Bible, but the very thing in question is in the Bible, biblical frame. This is allowed. That's the
Right.
very
No, it's
thing in
not,
question
bro.
right now.
Only God.
That's the very thing in question right now.
Show us where it's allowed in the
That's
Bible.
the whole thing that we've been talking about.
Show us
Show us
where a creature sends prophets. Show us where a
Well, it doesn't say that. It says God in His wisdom.
Show us where.
Avery, Q is whatever they want it to be. We get to dismiss whatever they want.
It says
That's not
God
Q,
in His
whatever they want.
wisdom. With that very same logic, you're telling us that Q is whatever you want it to be. When no one agrees with, nobody agrees. Yeah, but you said this is in Q when it's not in Q.
No, you said you would only use Q.
You
so I
said
brought
in
up what
Q, Jesus says, "I will send the
Hold
prophets."
up.
He does not say in Q.
Was her quote
He does
in
not
Q?
say in Q.
Was her
Hold up.
quote in Q?
Yeah, I think.
Okay, that's what we've been talking about for like the last hour.
Saying is IP's quote is not in Q.
I know, but we've been talking about her thing for an hour, and now you're going back to him.
because
I
defines
wasn't
differently.
And we're
This is important. Go ahead and say
So
it.
IP's quote, fine, is not in Q because we.
According to
I guess
some.
now.
No.
Because I guess now we define Q differently.
Yeah,
So now
whatever we
we
want
can't
it to
fully
be.
know.
What do you mean?
We made a
How
conscious edit to
do we
Q.
define
Just
Q?
send it to Q.
So now,
How do we define Q?
how would you?
No, you said we're defining Q differently. How do you define Q? Because you're telling us we're defining it differently.
We were
Well,
going
I'm asking
on
it's about
scholarly
because
reconstruction.
no, I'm asking it's
of-
about because
we're on
she
the
said we're
same
defining
team.
it differently.
Yeah, we're on the same team.
I don't think Bell understands what Q
doing
is.
Scholarly, you said we have to go to what the scholars are saying about the historical Jesus, and you brought up Q. Great, I brought up John Kloppenberg. This is his reconstruction of Q. It's a very popular one.
You
and I
didn't quote
brought
it
something in there
correctly,
where it clearly identifies Jesus as God.
It doesn't.
Well, that's not
It doesn't
true,
say
actually. That's
I will
the
send the
assembly.
prophets. It says
scholars don't
God
say that.
in His wisdom.
Yeah.
No, but you're misquoting it. You're misquoting it. It says God in His wisdom.
No, it doesn't.
It does.
No, it doesn't.
Luke
Wisdom said.
11:49. God in His wisdom.
Q in the Q construction doesn't.
And
say
the
that.
Q construction goes
says
by Luke, not by
Let's
Matthew.
see,
What?
let's see what it says.
Who says Q goes by Matthew?
So now, wait, hold on. So now, is it Luke's accounts that's the authority on what it said when what Jesus said?
Luke has always been what Q is based over.
But isn't it based off of what Luke and Matthew agree on?
Yeah,
that
but,
Mark doesn't.
but
have?
the Q document is pertaining closer to Q because Luke
But it pertains to both of
Preserves a
them
better
on the
copy
statements they agree, right?
We don't go off Matthew's quotes for Q. But what?
Scholars do not just say, well, if it's in both, therefore it's in Q.
Yeah.
Q is, there's some stuff in Matthew that's in Q. According to these hypothetical instructions, sometimes it's only in Matthew, sometimes it's only in Luke.
What?
Yes.
The double tradition, that's what you're saying. There's Q statements, which is what you reconstruct from a double tradition, is only statements found in Matthew.
Going off with the scholars that you guys wanted to bring up to get
they don't say this though.
So we don't have a documented up Q. We don't have a document. So we have to go on this hypothetical reconstruction of what the scholars say. They will say there are some times when you're going to the Q document, there will be parts of it will only be in Matthew, parts of it will only be in Luke. It's not just doublets.
Right, that's what I'm saying. What I was saying is I don't agree with you when you're saying that Matthew 23:34 is in Q, because it's not a double.
Let's move to closing statements.
Sure. You guys go first.
Okay. I just want to read it. According to the Q document, Jesus said, I will send you prophets. So just to reiterate this again. But again, we don't have Q. We only have the Gospels. And in the Gospels, Jesus says that. So it's his statement. You said we have to go to the Q document to know who the historical Jesus is. I did. He clearly said something that demonstrates he would have to be God. So that's the point I'm bringing up here. But at the end of the day, you guys wanted to say the historical Jesus didn't teach the Trinity. Surprisingly, the way you worded the prompt puts yourself in the positive claim, and you didn't actually demonstrate that because you went nuclear and destroyed any source we can use on who the historical Jesus was at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, this was not even justified because every time you bring up a source, you're like, well, we're going to throw that out. We're going to throw that out. We're going to throw that out. Constantly, we're going back to this circle. If it agrees with Islam, therefore we can accept it. If it doesn't, we reject it. We find some ad hoc reason to do it.
Yeah, just the main thing that we were really referencing is whether the biblical narrative allows for this, which we were giving Jewish references in the first century, and we were quoting the Bible to also support this, like 1 Samuel 25, pairing that with first century Jewish attestation that shows that this is an allowed Jewish belief, and therefore we can apply this first century belief onto the gospel, including the Gospel of John, to show that this wouldn't necessitate a Trinitarian belief, but rather it can also show first century Jewish monotheism. And I know that IP went over some quotes in Q and stuff, but not only do I disagree that it's in Q because it's in Matthew's quote, but Matthew's redacting what Luke says because we have the quote in Luke, and all scholars are going to agree that Luke is the one who preserves Q better. But IP's argument was to just quote one single scholar, Kloppenberg, and his attestation of it, which Kloppenberg doesn't even quote it the way IP says it. But furthermore, Kloppenberg thinks that Q teaches that Jesus is only just a prophet, not God himself. So the own scholars he's quoting wouldn't agree with him on his understanding of these passages he's citing. So there's no reason to think, even from Q, that Jesus is God, because everything we see in Q, as well as Kloppenberg agreeing that Jesus is assumed up into heaven alive, is found in Islam. So there's no reason to say that Q teaches your Trinitarian beliefs when your own scholars you're trying to quote don't agree with you on that.